Hi everyone, welcome to Ponderings of the Priest. A while back I was going through a pretty difficult time and I was talking to my spiritual director about it, and she said, "Don't worry, this too shall pass." And it did. And then, a time after that, things were going really, really well, and I was talking to her about, how great life was, and she said, "Don't worry, this too shall pass." And it did. And what she was getting me to reflect upon was the transient nature of life, the lack of safety in putting my hope and my sense of security in tangible things, and learning to rest in God alone, and to understand that difficult times and joyful times are just all part of our life. They're part of the rhythm of life. And what supersedes all of that is how I approach life, what my attitudes are about life, and where my faith is in all of that. Proverbs tells us that for everything there is a season, and this is so true, but we don't like that necessarily all the time. A lot of times we would like to avoid the difficult times. We would like to cling to some false sense of security. And so we get lost in a variety of things. We get lost in addictions of all sorts. There are the more obvious addictions that are more public, of alcoholism and drug abuse. But the things that are not spoken of perhaps are even more insidious, of abuse of prescription drugs, abuse of food addictions, of workaholism, of getting lost and avoiding difficult times in pornography addictions, in perhaps even video game addictions, where whatever it is, we're trying to use something to avoid reality and to escape. And as a friend of mine once said, the only way out is through. So how do we do that as a people of faith? How do we get through? And in getting through joyful times, how do we celebrate those joyful times? And how can we find the good and joy, perhaps, even in difficult times? Well, first we can look to Jesus. And what we see with Jesus is Jesus never hides. He never tries to escape reality. The cross for Jesus is part of the story. And it's only a part of the story. It's not the end. It's always the cross and. The cross and. And what Jesus teaches us is that faithfulness is more important than safety. Faithfulness is more important than any false sense of safety we might have. And in fact, safety is one of the most dangerous illusions that we ever create for ourselves, because we place our hope and our material goods and everything else in something that is transient and that passes away, because it all passes away. Bishop Hollerith tells us that we should not let our fear of what we might lose keep us from discovering what we can give. To not let our fear of what we might lose keep us from discovering what we can give. And so in order to find what we can give, we have to walk through whatever it is that we're walking through, perhaps even lose a few things, but then discover in the process that maybe that was a good thing. And another thought for us to ponder is to actually embrace risk, to hold out trust that God's work will always be redemptive. That as Christians, resurrection is always, always a part of our stories. And so we can not avoid, we cannot hide out, we cannot engage in what I like to call the ostrich effect. Because the thing about the ostrich effect is that whenever I bury my head in the sand, pretending that whatever it is doesn't exist, my fanny is waving up in the air for somebody to kick or hit or bump into. And usually that does not work out well. So Jesus tells us to trust in the Lord with all our hearts and do not lean. Actually, this is Proverbs. Trust in the Lord with all our hearts and do not lean on our own understanding. Trust. Embrace risk. Courage is faith that has said its prayers. And the only way out is through. Have a wonderful day, everyone.